So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our guests for today. And you've heard that right, there's two of them, which is a first. We have Donne Gonzales and Emily Arasim here from, they're both working with the Acequia Association currently here in New Mexico. And I met Emily actually in the library, in the public library in Santa Fe, where of course all the good revolutions are starting in the library. And we were there for a seed library meeting. And since then, Santa Fe has indeed its own seed library. And Emily is a very avid seed saver. So it was great to meet her there. And she will talk more about the many other wonderful abilities that she has and brings to the table. She's born in Tesuque along the Acequia Madre there. She grew up there and is now, as I said, working with the Acequia Association. And Emily suggested to bring Donne with her, who is her friend, I believe, and also colleague now at the Acequia Association. And Donne is was born in Chamisal, which is not that far from Tesuque. So with that, I leave it to them to tell you more about themselves. And I'm so pleased to have you here. I'm really honored to be with such amazing young women and young farmers. And of course, we need a whole lot more of you. So thank you so much for being here. With that, I go to Emily.
Good evening, everybody. Donne is actually going to be the first one to share her story, but I wanted to start this evening with a land acknowledgement. So we are speaking to you today from the homelands of the Pueblo peoples. For me, I'm joining you specifically from within the Tewa speaking world and the land that belongs to the people of the Pueblo of Tesuque. I think the importance of knowing and recognizing the original peoples of the land we stand on is so important, and really the least that we can do, most definitely for me as a person who is not Indigenous and who is not Indo-Hispano, and also in a very different, more complex way for those who have their strong generational connections to the land in New Mexico, but whose ancestors were also part of the history of Spanish colonization here. And I've heard people reflect that acknowledging and honoring the many layered histories of our state really is, one of the foundational things we need to keep doing to bring us towards healing and all the good things that we need. I also feel like us on the call today, as people who farm and care so deeply for the land, have an even greater responsibility than your average Joe to really understand the deep histories of this place, the many layered history of this place, because all of that history and change is held directly in the soil and the seeds and the water that we're going to be talking about today. So with that, I hope everyone can take a moment for the land acknowledgement of the place they are, and we'll pass it back to Donne to share her story and give her talk. And thank you guys for having us.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Donne Gonzales. I see some familiar faces. It's good to see y'all. I am 25 years old, and I am really happy to share my story with y'all. I feel like, sorry, I have my window open and all the geese are in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that. But I have a lot of connection to the soil and to land and to my place. And what that means for me is just querencia. The word querencia is a real word. And in Spanish, it's just like a love for the land, a love for something real, something true, like just the most yumminess thing that you can think of. And to me, that's my land, and that's farming, and that's my roots. So I grew up in Chamisal. I'm a lifelong farmer. I started market farming about 7 years ago, and I started direct sales to public school districts. I am part of the NM Acequia Association. I provide support to our sembradores, and we have a really beautiful yearly cohort of team members who get to learn how to farm in all aspects of growing on the land, working the soil, how to read your soil, looking for bugs and how to plant your seeds, how to harvest and to take to market. So that's really where I love to be, is outside teaching about farming. I do love to hang out with other youth, younger youth, and also teach them how important everything is. And so for me, my story all began when I was about 20 or 21, out of high school. I was still trying to figure out what I was doing in life. And I specifically remember I was in my hoop house. My parents have always had hoop houses and small gardens. So I was in my hoop house. I didn't have work. And they were just like, yo, go weed. And I had like this great epiphany of what I was like. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had this biggest epiphany of that I had the land and I had all this seed and I have the knowledge, and I just like, it just happened. And the soil I was going through crazy times and the soil took my pain and it gave me this bright idea of like, girl, why aren't you farming? And so then I had to get my market farming down and go through a process and figure out what that means to be a market farmer. Like, how can I live and be a farmer? And so I was like, how can we make money? And what does that mean for community? So during all that, I really got excited to know that public schools need food. What greater and like more value to give organic or traditional local food to beautiful kids who need it, who absolutely need it, because our state needs, we're a poor state. It's really hard to look at numbers and even to just digest like kids that are hungry or kids that aren't getting nutritional value. So like, once I knew that I could hook kids up with food that was being grown with love and that have like vitamins and minerals, and it made my heart feel good and it made my brain feel good, and it just made my community feel good to see that I was farming and taking care of the land and the water and kids and like getting everybody engaged because it's so exciting. But that's where it started. And so I just want to give a big shout out to the soil for hearing me and being amazing, because it's such a listener and it's such a provider, and our soil is just our mama, it's our mother earth. And that's what it means. It takes care of us, but we also need to absolutely take care of it in every aspect. And so that's where all the healthy soil comes in. Like, how do you take care of your soil? How do you read your soil? So I want to say, like, roll around in your soil, look at your soil, feel like an animal, like roll in the weeds, and look at the bugs, smell it, touch it, be in it. And that's the best way to read your soil, and it's the best way to feel one and to feel connected. That's how you're gonna feel good as a person, and that's how you can be in touch with your soil, and that's the most important. So as a farmer, I feel like it's really important to have healthy soil and to know how to read your soil, because if your soil isn't healthy, if you have vitamin deficiencies, or if you have nutritional deficiencies in your soil, then your vegetables aren't going to be grown to the best standard that they could be. And so then your body isn't going to be absorbing all the nutrition that it should be or that it's looking for. And so it's really important to take care of your soil. I'm huge on cover crops. Cover crops are really amazing. They're beautiful. That's just like a huge biodiversity connection, because they're fun. They're pollinators. They can be edible. And so saving those seeds is really important. There's a huge amount of like cool cover crops that you could pick from cowpeas to like rye and barleys and alfalfas and red clovers, and just so many beautiful options. And then being a farmer, you really just make the connection on that everything in life is connected, even if we don't realize all the time, but like how important it is to thank the Mother Earth, and to thank the water, and to thank the seeds, and to thank your neighbor, and to thank the teachers and the mentors and just everybody around. Because even if you're not farming and you're in your community and you're hanging out or buying local vegetables, you're making a huge difference, and it's a huge impact on yourselves, on your community, on your kids. Really, I always feel like this is about the babies, like the future. They're our future, and without a healthy soil and a healthy future in babies, then what do we have? So it's important. It's so important just to be in love with the soil and with healthy vegetables and all the beautifulness. And seeds. So seeds are also the next best important thing. Seeds, there's lots of different native local seeds, and I always want to give a huge shout out to just the seed keepers and seed savers. It's so important. I always have this cool PowerPoint to share with kids usually, but I always say that seeds are like a whole person in their own being. Like seeds have a brain, and they can think, and they can act, and they remember where they were, and they remember who planted them, and they remember their soil. So like it's just amazingly cool to think that seeds can do all that. But better yet, that seeds will grow for us. Like that's all they want to do, is they want to grow for us, to nurture us, to love us. So what greater beauty to enjoy the seed, to look at the seed, to be one with the seed, and to save the seed. And I also have really cool stories of this book that's called Anastasia, and I don't remember the author right now, but it's this story of how you put the seed in your mouth, and the seed is so smart that it picks up on deficiencies in your own body, and you plant the seed, and it actually grows to nurture you. Like it will grow with extra vitamin C if that's what you're lacking. And it's the most amazing thing to think that like, wow, a seed wants to take care of me, so you're gonna take care of it. And it's like the whole idea of taking care of your babies, taking care of your seeds. I always see seeds as babies. You need to talk to them, you need to love them, you need to nurture them. And that's like kind of where my whole talk about Dr. Emoto. I love a gentleman named Dr. Masaru Emoto. He is a Japanese professor, and he did this study on how water has vibrations and energies, and how it picks up on every single aspect. And so the idea of that each of us are water, and everything in this world has a water atom or molecule in it, so everything can fill. And just like you should be positive, you should just be positive and love. And the more love you have, the more love you give, the more love you get. The more love there is in the world, because that's what the water vibrations are filling and collecting, and then they give it back. So it's just this idea of that everything is so connected, because it is. It's the water and the soil and the seeds again, and our life and our tummies and our mouths, and just how we all are woven. Yeah, I want to emphasize that you guys should not be scared to get dirty, and just be one with Mother Earth. Like I said, my greatest love has come from learning from my parents, from my family, from my parents, from my grandparents, and even from my daughter. I feel like children are the biggest teachers, because they're not scared to get dirty, and they're not scared to eat a bug, and maybe it's not a safe bug, but they're not scared, and they're going to try it, and they're going to be all about it. So watch your kids and be like kids, and be open-minded and learn. Yeah, I feel like that's a good yeah, that's who I am. Cool. Emily, I don't know if you got your turn.
Okay. Well, hi again, everyone, and it's such an honor to be with you today, and especially to share after Donne, who is someone that inspires me and teaches me so much as a friend, as a colleague. And I was actually one of the young people that Donne trained. I was one of her farm apprentices at her farm in Chamisal in 2018. So Donne is both a dear friend and teacher to me, so it's so great to be with her. So as Isabel said, my name is Emily Arasim. I'm 26 years old. I'm speaking to you today from Tesuque, and I'm so thankful and honored to get to spend my life learning slowly to be a good farmer and to be a good caretaker of our seeds and our soil and our water here in New Mexico. My soil story, which I love that phrase, comes starting from a little casita here in Tesuque off of the Acequia de Tesuque, where I was born to parents who were newcomers here to New Mexico, coming in the 1980s, and where I've spent my whole life except for a short time away from our beautiful state when I was in college. And when I was reflecting, I think there's, two things that happened early in my life which have really shaped my connection to the land. The first is that when I was born, my mom knew kind of intuitively to follow the traditional practices of burying the placenta in the soil. And that's something that many cultures all around the world know is a really important way to tie your children to the land and to their home place forever. My mom always grew a small garden and would keep me there in a little basket on the end of the row while she was doing her thing. Um, the second thing was that I had the honor to grow up living on the ranch of our mayordomo here in Tesuque. So for those, that don't know, the mayordomo is the community member who's elected to care for the water, to care for the acequia, and manage how it flows through our community. So I was very lucky to grow up in relationship to my acequia, kind of following the mayordomo around and seeing how he worked and getting to accompany my family to do the yearly cleaning and the maintenance on our ditch, on our irrigation system here in Tesuque. And I share these experiences which shaped me as a child and inspired me to be a farmer with a lot of gratitude and humility, recognizing that the way that I feel deeply connected to this place and my deep love of this soil is important, but it's so small and so incomparable to the experiences and histories of a lot of my friends and colleagues and neighbors of Pueblo and Indo-Hispano descent who literally have generations of this love embedded in the very bones of who they are. And Donne is such an amazing example of that, and I'm so lucky to know her. As I mentioned, I left Mexico briefly and went to college, and I was studying international politics and all this kind of stuff. And I was saved by the fact that I had a good teacher that gave me a book by Vandana Shiva, who is a very renowned scientist and educator and farmer from India, who writes and speaks globally about the importance of protecting local seeds and resistance to GMOs, and the commercialization and theft of a lot of ancestral seeds by, the industrial agriculture system. So her book kind of lit up a light bulb in my brain and helped me remember back to all of the amazing food traditions that I had witnessed growing up as a child here in New Mexico, and helped me connect the dots that some of the biggest, problems and crises that we face, things like climate change, poverty and hunger, health issues, economic issues, the crimes of capitalism, like all of it was connected back to our industrial food system and the global food system in the way it's run these days. So I was very lucky to be, shaken by that and connected back to my experiences from home, and know that working in politics and the theoretical world was not what was going to work for me. It was really clear to me that farming itself, being an active farmer, was the best way that I could give and contribute to my community and help my own family and friends and people that I loved. So I got myself back to New Mexico as quickly as I could, really seeing how farming is one of the only things I can possibly think of that lets us both, push back against the injustices, push back against the things that are harmful, while at the same time also being an active part of building wellness and health for our communities. So I've been farming for seriously in New Mexico for about 6 years now, since I came back from that time away. And I work with different elder mentors and friends on their lands primarily. I also have a small little garden here in Tesuque, but we don't have very reliable agricultural water. So most of the farming I do is on the property of friends and elder mentors. And I want to pause now just to really honor all of the teachers and mentors who have welcomed me to their farms and shared their time and their wisdom. As a young person, I really can't even begin to express how deeply mentorship by farming elders has totally shaped my life and taught me to be a good farmer. It's taught me to be patient and always aware of how much we don't know. It's taught me that we're not doing anything super profound or new in this work, but rather we are following in the footsteps and building on the shoulders of generations and generations of land and seed and water stewards who have come before us in this place. It's taught me that farming is really, really hard, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. But if you really have it in your heart, you're gonna see it through no matter what you're up against. With my mentors, I grow primarily traditional foods like corn, beans, and squash. And in my own little field, I do the same. And I'm also trying to learn how to grow some of the foods that do connect me to my own ancestors as well, like beets and cabbages and things like that, don't really like it here too much, but they're adapting. And without a doubt, similar to Donne, the care and protection of our local seeds and local heirloom seeds is one of the things that grounds me and brings me the most joy as a farmer. It's what keeps me going, especially when it's really hard, backbreaking days, or when, we're barely scraping by to make it. The connection to the seeds and the ability to work with those seeds is really why I farm. I see seeds as a really big hope for our future, even as we're dealing with all of the drought and climate change and seeing how crazy society is around us, seeing these systems breaking down. I still have a lot of hope for the future because I have so much faith in the strength of our local seeds and the knowledge of the people here in New Mexico that have carried them on for generations, which again is indigenous, Hispano, and Mexican farmers for the large part. I'm still learning the best and most respectful way to do my work, but I hope to be able to spend the rest of my life growing and sharing strong, locally adopted seeds with my community and with other communities here in New Mexico. And to me, the seeds are a lot like the soil. I think so many modern farmers don't see the value in really putting in the time and the effort to care for the quality of their seeds and their soil. But if we look closely, we can see so clearly that you really can't have a sustainable, healthy farm until you care for these two foundational things in a respectful way without chemical inputs and chemical fertilizers and pesticides. So I see the seeds and the soil being really linked in that way. And yeah, I want to honor the seeds themselves. I have a little tray of some scarlet runner beans here. It'll probably be hard to see, but these are some of my favorite seeds. They're in the Ayacote family of beans, which are beans that originally came from Mexico. They're big beans with purple and black, and they climb up like a runner and have the most beautiful red flowers, which I love, and which also the pollinators and the hummingbirds love. So I consider them to be, part of my essential healthy ecosystem for my farm. I've been working in Nambe with my mentors this year, trying to keep safe and socially distant, and also working on a little plot here in Tesuque. And working on this plot at my neighbors this year, I've really learned a lot about the importance of soil, because it's a piece of land that, hasn't really been cared for in a long time, pretty degraded soil. And I didn't pay full attention to that when I planted, but now I've been watching my plants and, seeing them suffering. And no matter how good I do, no matter how hard I work to tend them, because the quality of the soil was pretty degraded, my plants can only do so much. They wilt a lot when it rains. The rain doesn't sink in deep, which we know is so precious and so needed. So I've definitely been learning a lot of lessons, particularly this season, about the soil and how important it is to really invest in our good soil. And for a lot of young farmers, I think this is hard to do if we're not in, in a place where we get to be securely for a long time. Being able to invest in that soil is a big thing. So the last thing I wanted to share, aside from my story, is a bit about what it means to me to be a young farmer. And to me, this really means people in their 20s and 30s, even older, even younger. But a lot of folks in their 20s and 30s, we're not, we're not teenagers. We're, in the middle of our life, yeah. And we're dreaming and struggling and really trying to figure out how it's possible to live our lives in this way. And Donne and I are just two of so many really incredible farmers, young farmers that could have talked to you today. So I just want to reassure you that contrary to popular belief, there's a lot of us and we are really dedicated to this. We are hardworking, we're creative, against whatever stereotypes you've heard, but we're also facing really big challenges, some of which are very different than what previous generations have faced. Things like huge student loans, rising costs of living, huge spikes in land costs, a lot of pressures to successfully make it in our consumptive economy. And also for young people whose families have been in New Mexico for generations, there's also huge injustices happening with gentrification and the push out and displacement of ancestral families by folks that have more money and more access to the land and these resources, and who are able to buy up the land without really thinking about what that means for families who have been truly rooted in this place for a long time. And a lot of young people are struggling to be able to get back that ancestral land so they can make their dreams happen. In northern New Mexico, we're also dealing with things like Los Alamos National Labs, which pulls away a lot of our youth to go work in that type of industry, because that's where we can make money, even though it's this big contradiction, because at the same time, they're really hurting the quality of our land and our water and our air here, and they've been doing so for decades. And finally, we have the weight of climate change on our shoulders, as many of you, I'm sure, know. It's, a big looming thing as we think about futures as farmers, that, it's likely only going to get harder and harder for us to farm here as we face more drought and more emergencies and more, just crazy social and political changes. So to want to be a young farmer these days is to have to be really brave and know that it's going to be hard and there's going to be a lot of challenges we can only begin to imagine. And sometimes I look around at my friends and I think we must be crazy to dream that this is going to be our future. But then I stop and I think and I feel more deeply, and I know that we're actually doing the best thing we possibly could choose to do with our lives, trying to live in a better way with each other, push back and address some of the historic injustices that have happened in our communities, and try to heal our own spirits and support health and healing for our communities. And we absolutely need to find a way to make a living for our families to be able to do this in a way that's going to sustain us economically. But I'm also super proud of our generation, because the reasons that we're farming is things like cultural and spiritual continuation, protecting local seeds, feeding our communities, and we're figuring out change and make it, and not make it just about making money, but really about healing the soil, taking care of the water, and taking care of each other. And I get to see this with other young farmers, and we also see this with the youth in school. Donne and I get to work visiting classrooms and boys and girls clubs and after school programs all across the state as part of our work with the NM Acequia Association. And you guys would just be blown away to see how much our young people are interested, how much knowledge they already have in their own families and their own experiences, and how excited they get when they're given the chance to kind of open up and talk about the land and what they love and what they do with their families. They know so much and they really do love it. So I want to end just with, encouraging everyone to trust young people, to support young people, to know that we are working really hard. but also that we have a lot of odds stacked against us to be young farmers, and we need lots of support and investment in our lives and our dreams so that we'll be able to, you know, really give the offerings that we want to give for our communities here in New Mexico.
Wow, thank you both. That was wonderful. So we are about to move into the question and answer period. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat, and I will recognize you to ask your question personally. But I think I'm going to start off while we're waiting on a question to come in. Donne, I'm wondering, how did you connect with the school to begin providing produce to them? How did that happen?
So I did take a farmer training course provided by the American Friends Service Committee. And through the American Friends Service Committee, they let me take specific trainings on how to handle food, because that's a big process on its own. You know, you need your triple wash stations and safe packaging, your fridge room. And they did a really great job at training and also giving me connections, and giving me connections to local school districts who need or who are looking for that food. And they also did a wonderful job at finding funding on the government level. So at the state level, they looked for money to be put into these districts.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, looks like Sylvia had a question. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Well, I wanted to say how much I totally enjoyed and appreciated your presentations. And I think that my question is, you know, I just really want to be open to you too. And, you know, throughout the season and also the winter time, I have lots of farm questions always. And, you know, my mother lived to be 104. And so I consider myself to be a young farmer. But at any rate, yes, I have questions about the tractor. I know that Donne uses a tractor. And so I'm gonna, you know, want to talk about tractor issues and also about your cover crops. I'm sort of I'm planting sort of ongoing, and which may appear late, but I'm planting no matter what. And so the soil health is very important to me, Emily and Donne. And this group's been very good too. They've been, the Healthy Soil people have been very kind. And so I totally appreciate what you all are saying also about, you know, the acequia. And I think like the poetic approach to farming is so critical. It's that poetic approach it has so much heart in it. And so I really want to continue in that tradition. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to say. And I have so many questions that I can't really quite figure out which one, but anyway, did make my comments.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. And Anna, did you want to comment?
No, I just really appreciate the passion and the excitement. It's contagious, and it's wonderful to hear, because farming can be very exhausting and tiring, but also very rewarding. Kind of like having children, you know, very exhausting but very rewarding. So thank you both very much for being here.
Thank you. All right, Emmy, you have a question?
Oh, yes, thank you. Hello. Yes, see, I wrote it in the chat, but basically I'm wondering, how did you adapt this year to the harsher light, heat, wind, and drought? Either of you could answer. Thank you.
Okay.
You go first, Donne.
I feel like this year has been definitely weird. Every year is a little bit weirder. For me, I live really close to the mountain, and so it's been extremely cold and then extremely hot. And everything's like almost ready a month early. So I don't feel like all my vegetables got all the time to grow. And my best like option right now is just to continue my seed saving, because if I continue my seed saving process, my seeds are going to have to adapt to the climate that I have here. There's really no other option other than praying and loving and hoping for the best outcome.
That's exactly what I would say too. I think me and Donne both have a lot of our faith in the seeds and saving good, strong seeds that are going to be able to withstand these changes because they've been here before in different ways. So that's what I would affirm and share too.
Thank you. Claudia, you had a question? Are you muted?
Unmute. Now we go. Here we go. I wanted to say thank you very much for sharing your stories. They're wonderful to hear. I've been thinking about cap and trades and reading up about how California uses the funding from cap and trades to invest in green projects. And so anyway, just and one of the ways they do that basically is also that soil, the sequestration of carbon in soils can then also fund the kinds of projects that further sequester soil, carbon in soil. Do you guys like that idea as young farmers and kind of with the more holistic vision you have, or do you feel like that's too much of an economy solution and doesn't really line up with what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think it's hard. Oh, I'm echoey. There's a lot of specifics to different ways that it's done, but some of the critique I've seen has been, what you said, that a lot of these solutions around cap and trade and stuff like that relies on putting a price tag on the soil, valuing it in that way that's really, within the type of mindset that's hurting us. So I think those things have to be looked at really carefully and really evaluated to make sure that they're not going against the values of land-based peoples and the values, that are the deepest values we hold. So I can't speak super specifically to it, but I know a lot of good people that are looking very closely at those things to make sure that, they're not solutions that are just finding another way to do the same kind of bad stuff that we've been doing, which is to make it all about money, to make it very technical and not very accessible. But I do definitely know the idea of, valuing how our land is holding and sequestering carbon. That's super important. But how do we figure out ways to do it that aren't going to rely on a bunch of economic markets and investors and all these things that have, really caused a lot of harm in the situation we're in now?
Well, I will read what you put in the chat since you're having trouble with your internet. Raina also observes, and I would have to second her comment, that about things being a month earlier here as well as you're experiencing there. So let's go on to Julie and Scott, who've asked about supporting young farmers. Would you like to pick that up, Julie and Scott?
Whoa, yes. I don't know how many people here are from Santa Fe County or Rio Arriba or whereabouts, but we have lived in La Puebla for 40 years, and we have 20 acres of irrigated land on the Maestas ditch and also the La Puebla ditch. And we recently became aware of a program with Santa Fe County that allows landowners to remove the development rights from their property in order to preserve agricultural land specifically or open space. And I just wanted to share that with everyone because it's a very new program. We are the largest landowners participating in it right now. We're attempting to preserve 15 of our irrigated acres into that program. And what it does is it not only does it incentivize landowners to preserve land, it does so by the potential, and I say potential because it's by no means guaranteed that you will be able to sell your development rights. And we're blessed right now to have 2 young farmers farming on 2 of our acres. On the eastern side, we have Western Family Farm, Claire Price and Nate Massey on some of our land, but we have a lot more land that's available. And because we have irrigated land, we actually get bonus development rights, which is more than landowners would get if they had dry land. And I really think that this program is part of the Santa Fe County Code, and the Santa Fe County Land Use Department is managing it, but I don't think they're promoting it as strongly as they could be. I also feel like the Acequia associations could also be advocating for this program, and that the land use county, the land use division and the Acequia associations could be working in tandem to make sure that irrigated land is preserved. So if anyone has any questions about that, we'll answer as best we can. We're in the process of applying. And I also wanted to ask if anyone knew what the status of the LandLink organization was that links young farmers in general with land.
Let's see. Well, I'm going to go to Isabel here for a question, but first I know that with respect to LandLink, the credit union, Nusenda, which has an office in at least one location in Santa Fe, is tied into LandLink. So that would, I don't know a lot about it, but that would be a funding group that could potentially be involved in this. So Isabel, do you want to ask your question?
Well, I was just curious, Julie and Scott, where we could learn more about this program. I'm actually in Santa Fe and very interested. I've never heard of it.
I could say a little bit more. Basically, what the county has done is it's created sending areas and receiving areas. So if you are in a sending area like we are, you are eligible to sever the development rights from your property, which means you will never be able to build houses on it. And you then can sell them to a developer in a receiving area that the county has designated, and they've mapped the county out in this regard. And that developer can then more densely develop in an area, say like the community college district, or an area that has been deemed appropriate for development. And we were very judicious about the area, the land that we are intending to conserve. We retained some development rights, and you can do that. But having irrigated land as we do, we actually get a bonus for that water, which is appropriate because this land is so scarce and so precious and unique. And once you build houses on it, you can't irrigate it well for agriculture. So that's where our commitment came from, and that's where the county's structure of giving bonus development rights to folks who have irrigated land came from. And it is in the Santa Fe County Land Use Code. You can look up transferable development rights, and you can read the articles in there and learn a little bit. And I can share our contact information if you want to talk a little bit more too.
Okay. And it looks like Claudia has put in a link to the program. Emily or Donne, would you like to comment on this program or what we're discussing?
I don't necessarily know anything about the program. I will share that I feel like there are a lot of local elders in communities, and they're going to be the best bet as teachers. And kids need the land, but it's hard to work with all the paperwork. You know, a lot of teenagers or young adults are not willing to deal with paperwork. And even elders, some elders have problems with it. So I feel like the best bet is to be direct contact with youth, and know that everybody has something to share, everybody has something to teach, and everybody has something to learn. So just keeping that in mind.
Emily?
I will share. I apologize.
No,
I don't feel like I got to comment back on Sylvia's question, and so I did want to talk a little about the tractor. I do believe in tractors. I use them. I love to drive my tractor, and it makes me feel super cool. But I will use the tractor probably 2 to 3 times out of the year. I do use it to disc the field, to plow the field, or to furrow. So I use it really to make it easier when planting season comes. Otherwise, I kind of let it chill during the rest of the season. I like to do lots of hands-on, so I feel like hand weeding is the best. That's when you can fill, like I said, and see at the space that you need to be. So tillers are awesome, tractors are awesome. I would say use them as needed. They're tools. Don't break your back if you have a tiller or a tractor.
Thank you. Sylvia, you had a comment?
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, my comment was, I hope someday there will be a union to protect small family farms and farmers. I think children would stay. We have a lot of young people who leave our state, and I think they would stay and farm if there were more protections and benefits for farmers and protections for water, land, and air. And I think when you compare farming to other jobs, I see farming as a very lofty pursuit and form of work that needs to be really idealized. And it should have all of the benefits, like health benefits, that many other jobs and careers have in other fields, and that what we grow here in New Mexico really needs to be valued, especially in the future, because we're not going to be able to bring in all of this other food from other states, other places. And if people honestly could begin also to grow food themselves as well, that would dramatically change attitudes. I mean, about having some kind of a sacredness of life connection. I feel like we've lost that connection, the sacredness of life. And that's why I'm so excited when you talk about seeds. I mean, my heart starts going pitter patter, because you know, that I can feel that connection to life again. And but no, we need some stuff up at the legislature. You know, we need some rocking and a rolling up there, you know, about our rights, you know, about our, why are other people in other fields so privileged, and why are we not as appreciated? You know, I think that what farmers have, and that's across the board, farmers are like without farmers, I mean, wow, can you imagine? It would be hard to imagine. So we need to be honored and appreciated. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Sylvia. And we have one last question. Isabel, would you like to ask it? And I will relay Anna's comment that no farmers, no food. Go ahead, Isabel.
Well, it's kind of a follow-up on what Sylvia just shared. How can we best support young farmers? What would you say, Donne and Emily?
Want to go or do you want me to? Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind is around really trusting and believing young people of New Mexico. I think there's, you know, a lot of happening in our state of people and young people coming from other places and being super excited to farm, but we really need to invest in our own young people that are of this place and deeply connected to this place, and believe in them and provide all the opportunities for them and really prioritize that. I think that's really important. Through my work with Donne, I've also seen the big power of youth talking to other youth. I think, you know, we've honored so many times that we have so much to learn from our elders, and giving youth and young people the opportunity to hear from their elders is always going to be one of the most important things that we can do. But I'm also a super big advocate of creating more spaces like today for young farmers to tell their own stories about what they're doing and let other young people see us. You know, when me and Donne go into schools and tell them we're farmers, kids are like, what? No way. And they have an entirely different interest and way that they're going to connect to it when they see other young people choosing to live their lives this way. So I'm a really big advocate for more of those spaces, and, you know, intergenerational spaces, elders and other young farmers showing other young people that this is really a possibility.
Donne, did you want to add anything?
I feel like she did a wonderful job. I would also just echo that being open to youth and listening is one of the biggest things that we can do. You know, education isn't for everybody. Some kids aren't about school, but they can definitely be about hands-on stuff, and that's farming. And you can learn so much on the farm. You can talk about soil science, and you can talk about math, and you can talk about like every subject, but listen and be aware that they know so much, and really respect them, because youth have so much to offer.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, Danielle, I see that you've got a question, and we're getting toward the very end here.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Go ahead.
So hi, I've been following the New Mexico Acequia Association online for a bit, and I just want to say that you two are both doing a great job. I co-manage the Downtown Growers Market here in Albuquerque, and very interested in hearing from young farmers and your experiences and everything here in New Mexico. And I guess I'm just curious what outlets have been the most beneficial and maybe the easiest for you to access as far as selling any of your products. It sounds like you both have maybe utilized the schools, and Donne, you mentioned farmers markets. So I'm just curious how your experiences have been with that, and if there's anything markets can do to help support young farmers.
I feel like markets are really wonderful, and I feel like they've really been welcoming towards young people or young farmers. So thank you. I feel like my best way to get rid of vegetables is really to share. I feel like sharing is the most important thing right now, not even selling, but sharing with your neighbors, sharing with your elders, because it's priceless to share. They take care of you, you take care of them, they're gonna take care of you. And value added, I feel like value added is really cool. Not a lot of people talk about value added, but how, you can take your carrots, put them in vinegar and have a really awesome pickled whatever, and how that can be really worth more at a farmer's market.
Okay. And something I think of is, we have to, and I know all of the markets are really different, but making sure that we don't put too many hurdles in the road as far as inspections and stuff like that. I know that a lot of the young farmers that are my friends and colleagues are wanting to grow traditional crops. We want to make red chili powder, we want to make blue cornmeal, we want to make pozole. And I know there has been times where we've had struggles with some of the markets to make sure that we can still continue to do those things without needing to have a super expensive certified kitchen and all this stuff. So making sure that our, these kinds of bureaucratic things don't stop young people from producing the things, especially the things that are important parts of their traditions.
Okay. Well, there are a few more comments that I'll leave it to you guys to review in the chat because we're at the end here. Thank you very much, Donne and Emily, for being with us this evening. It was delightful, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. And I'm going to turn this over to Rob, who's going to introduce next month's speaker.
Well, I want to reiterate what Christina says. We really thank Donne and Emily. I'm really impressed with your enthusiasm and your dedication. It's inspiring. So next month, we have in our Soil Stories series, we have the Secretary of the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, Jeff Whitty, who we're very excited to have, who's going to present his soil story. I know Katie Getz is on, and I know New Mexico Department of Agriculture is doing a great deal in implementing the Healthy Soil Act and running the Healthy Soil Program. So we're very excited to hear from Secretary Whitty, and we really appreciate, like we do, Donne and Emily and others who are participating on Soil Stories, all of those who are presenting for our network community. So we look forward to that, and thank you all for participating in these Soil Stories.
All right, very good. Isabel, do you want to close us out?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Donne. This was a great conversation. Have a wonderful evening. Hopefully we'll get some rain.
Yes, we'll all go out and do our rain dances. Good evening.
Bye. Thank you.